Alright, guys. Um, this is an attempt on getting information out for the upcoming raid, Sepulcher of the first ones. There's not a whole lot of information floating around right now, so I thought I would try to get a little bit ahead of the curve and try to put out some information right now before we head into things. I think the raid launches on March 1st, while 9.2 comes out on the 22nd of February. So, I know normally in Sanctum of Domination, whenever we'd first come to the fight, I would talk for about half an hour about the entirety of the fight, and then we would spend the next 10 minutes before raid is done pulling. So I definitely thought a video would be an easier way to go about it, because if you get tired of hearing me talking, you could pause it or you could skip ahead. I don't normally do videos. I'm not a video editor of any of the sorts. So this is just going as it is. So jumping right into the fight. This is Guardian of the Vigilant Guardian of the first one. Vigilant Guardian is what it's called. There's a few notable things about this one. It is not a direct boss tank and spank kind of a fight. It does seem to be relatively easy, just kind of eases you into the raid, just like all normal bosses are. So to my understanding, because there's not a whole lot of videos, clips, or really just general information floating around, this is what I've been able to scatter off of various PTR testing and videos that I've seen various YouTubers make. They don't really seem to be super complete on their information, probably for a good reason, so that way they could try and get, the race to world first as fast as they can without sharing information. So, Vigilant and the Guardian. There is the first phase, which is going to be the longest phase in the fight out of 3. There are going to be multiple ads that have to be tanked near these guys. These guys are the Guardians. There is, to my understanding, 4 of them scattered across the room, and various ads will be activating throughout this phase. There are 3 ads. There is a Vigilant Custodian, there are some small melee ads, and there's some medium-sized ranged ads. The tanks have to... Here, let's say this one will... This will represent the Custodian. They're going to go ahead and take him all the way to the nearest one, the nearest Guardian. This doesn't have to be our first starting board, and it's just a sake of argument here. So let's say that this Custodian spawns, right? The tanks are going to be stacked together because the Custodian will do a cleave effect. So if there's any other melee here, they're going to suffer the cleave if they don't, if the other tank isn't here. Very much like Sludge Fist from Castle in Africa. So they're going to stay stacked on top of each other. The Custodian will emit a tank debuff at 50% energy, and the other tank will simply just taunt off, and then they'll just stay there. The positioning here is try to keep this this Custodian facing away from the group, so that way when it reaches 100% energy, it'll do a wave of disintegration, targeting wherever the tank is at, and just do a line. So if, for the sake of argument, they were right here, the positions were kind of reversed, then it would send a line at the tank through the rest of the raid, and now it's affecting the melee people. So that's just reasoning why we need to keep him facing away, ideally towards any of the backs over here, the walls or exits, whatever you want to call them, just away from the group. we generally want to stay away from the middle of the room because there's mainly one mechanic that we want to watch for with that, and that's it's an ability called de-resolution. It will form a laser right in the middle of the room right here, and it's going to point at someone. So let's say it points at ranged DPS number 1. It's going to send, after a couple of seconds of forming, like a hexagonal beam towards this player and affecting everyone else here. So really simple mechanic. What we got to do is ranged DPS number 1 goes over there. Well, now the beam's facing this way and it starts to activate. It activates and then does a slow, I wouldn't say a slow creep, but it does a rather quickly line creep over here. So now he has to come all the way back over here, and bam, the resolution mechanic is avoided. Again, I mentioned 2 other ads that are going to be coming around here. The small melee ads should be able to just come to the tanks on top of this Vigilant Custodian. It makes it excellent to cleave. It's not like there are any ads that we have to prioritize or anything like that. Just, you know, if you have any hunters that could help misdirect, or tricks of the trade, while tanks try, like the off tank of this can also go ahead and move over and start collecting ads, bringing them over to the Guardian over here. Or not the Guardian, the Custodian. And then just cleave those down. They really shouldn't pose much of a threat. The like medium-sized ads, which are the ranged casters, they do have an ability that you could kick. So that should be done whenever possible. If we have, again, hunters, I mean, they're jack of all trades, man. What can't they do, right? Or any ranged kicks that we're able to do to get rid of those, so that way we could start, you know, bringing them towards here, so that way we cleave them a little bit or group them together and what have yous. They'll also cast one more thing. It's really just a channel on random players. Healers just have to make sure that they're focusing healers onto that player that's getting channeled on, because it's going to deal a good amount of damage. Just make sure that they're staying nice and topped off. Let's see here. Is that about it for... no, I think there's one more mechanic for phase 1, and it's called Refracted Blast. What it's going to do is it's going to target several players. So let's say we have these... not you, you can stay away. Let's say we have these players getting selected. It's going to form hexagonal patterns around the feet of players in pretty rapid succession. All you have to do is just move away from them. It should be relatively easy to avoid. As soon as you get used to seeing what it looks like, you're going to have a lot easier of a time dodging them. So what do all these ads do? We have to kill all of these ads near this Guardian, so that way, very much like in what is it, the Anima Golem fight in Mist of Pandaria, the wherever the ad is killed, like the nearest Guardian will absorb that energy. Once that Guardian, this Vigilant Guardian right here, it has 100% energy, it's going to cast, it's going to have like a circle around it, and this is a protection zone. So that means this guy will probably not be there. It might be there. Everyone's going to get in this little protection zone over here. Once the main boss over here, he also has a percent bar that you're going to see probably at the top of your screen. Once that reaches 100% energy, it's going to start casting Exposed Core. Exposed Core does a metric shit ton of damage every second for 10 seconds. So being within this Guardian's bubble allows you to I think either outright avoid all the damage or reduce it immensely to where it's no longer an issue. After 10 seconds, exposed core stops, the Guardian dies or deactivates, whatever you want to say, and it will drop a core. Someone needs to grab that core, ideally someone with like a speed buff, because from what I've seen in the videos that I've watched, it'll slow you down. So if you have like a shaman with Spirit Wolf or a rogue with sprint and shadow step, someone that could just easily make it over here to cast that core into this wall. After 3 of those cores, this is going to be repeated how many more times? 2 more times. So once that happens a total of 3 times and 3 of these guardians are dead, and we throw all 3 cores into this hole over here, then the boss should go ahead and roll out from here, killing anyone in his path. So just don't be in this area. I think he ends right about here. I think the boss ends right about here. So no player should be around that area once phase 2 begins. At that point, we're going to want to make sure to kill any remaining ads, because they're just going to be a nuisance at this point. And then just start tinking the main boss, who I'll have as this little icon right over here. The positioning on this one should probably be something like this. So the refracted blast still carries over, which is the patterns that go over your feet. Just simply dodge that. If you don't dodge it, it'll deal a good chunk of damage. Might even be able to move it somewhere closer over here. Now, the boss does an ability called Split Resolution. To me, it looks very similar to like from Plaguefall, Dr. Ickis, his little slime lunge, wherever he lands somewhere and 4 patterns of plague just burst outwards from him. Very similar, except he doesn't jump, and it's 6 expanding zones. One can go, this way, this way, and this way, this way, this way, this way. It's an outward expanding zone, so just make sure melee in particular are very careful about that. Ranged, you have a little bit more time to act. There is another mechanic here called Matter Dissolution. It will target random players with a 10-second debuff. Once you get this debuff, you're going to want to move over to this side of the area, because upon the expiration of it, there will spawn little balls around each player, and it's gonna roll towards some sort of merge spot. Now, from what I can tell, it doesn't look like there's a specific indicator or reason as to where the merge spot will be. From what I have seen, it looks to be somewhere close to the center, but I'm not sure if that's a consistent thing. There is a very small grace period for the orb spawning for you to get out of the way back into position with the rest of the group. So that way, these little orbs over here, they will converge onto this one spot right over here and just disappear. That's the entire mechanic there. If you get hit by the orb, you're going to take heavy damage, give you a debuff, essentially guaranteeing death if you get hit by a second one. Let's see here. I believe this boss, also very similar to the first phase with the custodians, will also have a tank debuff at 50% of its energy. So just swap it one stack, stay together, and you'll be good. A lot of this is pretty much just avoiding mechanics. It's very tank and spank at this point. Just dodge shit and you'll be good. There's no other ads that you have to worry about other than the ones that you didn't kill at phase 1. Again, because of how much testing has been done and the testing that I've been able to see, I think Lust should 100% be used at 15% of health, which is when the boss enters phase 3. I've seen this phase last around 1 minute ish, and that's with the bloodlust effect. And this is the this is just the burn phase. It's, very similar to Eye of the Jailer, where you have a certain amount of time to kill the boss before he just overwhelms you in damage and you can't heal through it anymore. Every 3 seconds, he's going to cast raid-wide damage with a stacking 30% damage taken debuff every time it happens. So the easiest way to do this is, since there is legitimately no more mechanics other than this overloaded state, like he stops. He becomes he gets down on one knee and he overloads. He can't do anything anymore. Everyone just stacks into melee. Again, because there's no mechanics going on anymore. This allows for a whole slew of defensive cooldowns to be utilized during this phase. Warrior Shout, Anti-Magic Zone, Darkness, Discipline Bubble, fucking Shamans and their Healing Rain, and what is it called? The fucking Spirit Link Totem. You know what I'm saying. In my opinion, since the damage starts out relatively low, I don't think any defensives need to be popped until maybe stacks 4 or 5. Now this could change, but as of this moment, I'm gonna stick with the 4 to 5 debuff stack, to where we should start using Warrior Shout or Anti-Magic Zone, Darkness. Those kinds of lesser cooldowns that aren't just legitimate throughput, that will allow for the healers to have a smoother time going into some of the more heavier phases. And then once we're probably out of those, probably around 7 to 8 stacks, I think, then we could start using personal cooldowns. Unending Resolve, Die by the Sword, Cloak of Shadows. I do not believe hunters should use their Aspect of the Turtle during this phase. You have to completely stop damage to prevent damage. I do not believe that's worth it unless you have a cancel or a macro and you're okay, 1, 2, use my Aspect of the Turtle, dodge the damage, cancel my Aspect of the Turtle immediately. That's the only reason why I could see that being used during this phase. It's a race. We need to kill it because it'll kill us if we don't. And then around that same 7 to 8 stack phase, and again, these are all hypothetical breakpoints because I do not know how it will go. I could honestly see maybe 9 to 10 stacks is when some of the heavier cooldowns can be used. Tranquility, Holy Word, Salvation, Spirit Link Totem. I always believe that Spirit Link Totem should be used towards the end to help regulate everyone's health. So that might be a last kind of a cooldown to use. Anyway, at the end of that, that's the end of the boss. You kill him, everyone gets loot, and everyone's happy. We all have our tier 4 tier sets, and we're able to go to the next boss. That's all I got for you right now for this boss. I'm gonna try to follow up with more videos on the rest of the bosses.